As you can see, the stock forward air defense platform from Trumpeter does not include any semblance of a wind baffle, and for some unknown reason, FlyHawk decided not to include a wind baffle in its photo edge detail upgrade kits, which is a bit unfortunate. Actually, there's a lot of detail that's missing in this area of the ship, including from the FlyHawk detail upgrade kit. There are a lot of mounted binoculars and such in this area that just aren't included. Fortunately, I do have some components left over from my HMS Prince of Wales, and those will be salvaged for this area. But I won't be doing any of that in this video. That will come much later down the line. This video is all about constructing from scratch a wind baffle for this area of the superstructure, and then installing the forward air defense platform onto the top of the compass platform. First, I need to choose the plastic stock that I'm going to use to construct these wind baffles. The height of the wind baffles, I think, should be around 1 millimeter on the model. For the support struts, I want them to be as thin as possible. The thinnest that I could find was 0.5 millimeter, and once again the thickness is 0.25. Now that I know what stock I'm going to be using, I need to figure out how to mark off the locations for the stock to be installed. Since it is quite difficult to take measurements on the model, I place masking tape in the location where I'm going to be building the wind baffle and cut it to the correct length. I can then measure and mark the spacing of these support struts off the model on a flat surface where it's far easier to work. The most tedious aspect of this build will be preparing the many very small support struts for the face of the wind baffle. In the past, this would have been a task that would have been an absolute nightmare for me, simply because I didn't have the correct tool to make repeated accurate cuts. Now that I have the chopper, that is not a problem. The most difficult part of cutting these support struts is just going to be getting them to the correct length, and that's a trial and error process. After a bit of back and forth, I have everything squared up and I'm able to cut these support struts to the correct length. Cutting these support struts was not difficult, it was just tedious. So I'm not going to make you sit through all that. You can just have the wonder of a time lapse to see me quickly cut 40 of these things. Although I didn't need 40 in the end, I needed around 30. The fact that I was so easily able to cut 10 more than I required is just a testament to how effective the chopper really is. In the past, I would be dreading every single cut, and I would be counting down to the precise number that I needed to complete the job. There's no ways I would have spent the time to cut extra. After cutting off 40 support struts, I then cut off the face for the wind baffle. A trial and error process is also used to determine the correct length for these sections. Here I'm just measuring these sections against the area that I'm going to install them on the side of the air defense platform. Once I have one in the correct shape, I then repeat the cut for the other side and create a duplicate. I now have sufficient components to begin installation. First, I stick the masking tape with the spacing for the support struts marked on it onto the area where I'm going to be installing support struts, and then I place a drop of extra thin plastic cement onto the surface. You'll notice that I put a very large drop of extra thin plastic cement onto the area before I place the support strut in its location. That is intentional. Extra thin plastic cement will evaporate very quickly and leave very little residue on the surface. Also, extra thin plastic cement will not stick to metal. That will be a huge advantage over super glue because it will allow me to hold these very small components with the tweezers without gluing the tweezers to the component. If I were to do this with extra thin super glue, this process would be considerably more difficult. I'm able to safely flood the area with extra thin plastic cement and gently place the plastic strut into that drop of glue. Although this is fast setting plastic cement, it doesn't set instantly, and I still have time to position the components while the glue sets. This is one of those situations where you need a little bit of confidence because it looks very messy. It looks like it's going to go very badly, but in reality, this process is actually very safe. And it's probably the easiest way that you can go about building something like this. Since the extra thin plastic cement evaporates so quickly, I have to repeatedly apply new drops for each strut that I install. But as you can see, it doesn't harm the component, and the excess glue very rapidly evaporates off. After installing a row of the support struts along one side, I then install the faces of the wind baffle. I use a similar technique for installing the face as I did for installing the struts. I put a good drop of extra thin plastic cement into the area where I want it installed, and then I drop the face of the wind baffle on top of the struts. I then have a bit of time to maneuver it into the correct position and then apply more extra thin plastic cement to properly bond it in place. Although the area is temporarily flooded with extra thin plastic cement, it quickly evaporates off and leaves a nice looking wind baffle. This process is then repeated for the forward side of the wind baffle. In this case though, I have cut the faces for the wind baffle to be longer than they need to be. Since I don't know how long that is, I'll just keep it long at this point, and once I've installed the wind baffles on the front of the air defense platform, I will cut it to length. These curved sections on the side also need to have a wind baffle installed on them. They are very small, so I wanted to see how much space I'd have before installing the support struts. And reasonably, I think I can only put 2 of them in this area. So I place 2 down and then give them a moment to dry before installing the face of the wind baffle. This curved section of wind baffle is possibly the most complicated part of this construction. That being said, it's not very complicated. To assist with its installation, I took a piece of 1mm plastic stock and pre-bent it so that it's at least roughly curved into the correct shape. And then I glued one end into position first. Although this is rapid setting extra thin plastic cement, it doesn't set instantly, so I put it down and let it dry for around an hour before I came back to work on it. Once it was dry, it's now a matter of cutting and easing it into its correct size and shape. I start by taking quite a generous cut, leaving a lot of excess, and then test to see how much more excess I need to remove. I then take another small cut and check how much more I need to remove. I keep on doing that until I cut it to the perfect length, in which case I bend it into position and then glue it in place using more extra thin plastic cement. Now that I've successfully completed the installation of the wind baffle on the port side of the platform and I'm happy with its condition, I will repeat the process on the starboard side. Since it went well, I followed the exact same process. Now that both the port and starboard side wind baffles are installed, I just need to install the wind baffle at the front of the air defense platform. I start by cutting a piece of tape to the length of this face for the air defense platform so that I can determine the correct spacing for the support struts. Once the tape is marked, I then stick it back onto the air defense platform and begin installing the support struts. The installation of the support struts is exactly the same as it was for the sides. Now that all the support struts are installed, I need to cut the face for the wind baffle that will go on this forward section of the air defense platform. This section of wind baffle needs to be the perfect length to fit between the extended wind baffles on the port and starboard sides of the platform. So I'm going to take a little bit more time to properly cut this piece. I'm going to cut it using the chopper so that the edges are properly squared off. To determine the initial length for this cut, I position the air defense platform between the set square and the blade on the chopper and push it right up against the blade. I know this is probably going to give a cut that is a little bit too long, but too long is better than too short. You can always shorten the plastic more. I then make my first cut and test it against the components, and I can see as expected it is just a little bit too long. So I adjust the set square very slightly and try again. It is still too long, so I adjust slightly again and try again. It's still too long, so one more time. Looks good. I'm happy with that. I'll now install it. Now that I have the correct length piece of styrene stock, the installation is basic. It's exactly the same as for all the other faces. It's just a matter of it sitting in a very specific location. But it's easy to get in place because the extra length sides of the port and starboard wind baffles just hold it in position very nicely. After making sure that all the faces are nicely glued together, I just set this component aside to dry for a while. I don't want to cut it too soon and then move or collapse all these structures. Once the glue is fully set, I then need to shorten the sides of the port and starboard wind baffles. That's easy to achieve. I just use my clippers to clip them down to the correct length, and then I file off the excess using a bar file. As always, I need to check the work using a surfacer to reveal any defects and to reveal any scratches. Spray the area with Mr. Surfacer 500, and it looks pretty good. There are some areas where I think a little bit of glue got onto the outside of the wind baffle and it looks a bit rough, but that's easy to fix. A little bit of light sanding removes those defects. I spray the area with another round of Mr. Surfacer, and it looks good. Looks really good. This is a nice outcome. I'm very happy with that. So I can now paint the air defense platform and prepare it for installation on the top of the compass platform. I spray the wind baffles and splinter shields or balustrades with XF53, and then I mask off the area and spray the deck with XF82. After the paint is dried, the masking tape is removed and the part is ready for installation on the top of the compass platform. To glue the air defense platform onto the roof of the compass platform, I use Revell Contactor Professional. I apply it to the roof of the compass platform, and then I position the air defense platform on top of the compass platform. Take a bit of time to ensure that it is centered properly and aligned correctly with the other components. There is plenty of time to do this due to the slow drying nature of Revell Contactor Professional. In the next video, I'll make a modification to the rear air defense platform, and I'll construct the platform for the spotting top. If you would like to support this channel or see how this ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.